It's time to go into business for yourself. Get ready for another episode of the Franchise Academy podcast. Here's your host, small business and franchise expert, Tom Scarda.
Thank you for listening to the Franchise Academy podcast. We're live on YouTube and also on the franchiseacademy.com. My name is Tom Scarda. I'm a franchise advisor and coach by day and a franchise advisor helping people around the country, but also a podcaster by night. I'm really excited about this particular episode for a few reasons. Number one, it's a company called Blooming Blinds, and they did the blinds in my house. So I'm not only a client, but but I really like the product, but I love the business. This is a family business that's owned by a mom and three sons, and I come from a family of three sons. I'm the oldest of three boys, born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, as opposed to Kelsey, who we'll talk to in a minute, who is originally from the Seattle market, way different than the New York market, but definitely a cool market in itself. The Starbucks is what comes to mind when you say, Seattle and things like that. So I'm really excited to have you on, Kelsey. Thanks for taking the time. I know you're busy running this multi-million-dollar company now that started in your garage or in your mom's garage. Welcome to the Franchise Academy.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to see you again, buddy.
Yeah.
Twice a year is just not enough.
Right. We catch each other at the Franchise Conference twice a year. For those listening that don't know, Franchise is a company that matches people with franchises based on skills and personality and goals, kind of like the eHarmony of business. I've been a consultant with the company now for 19 years. I found my first franchise through Franchise back in 2000, so almost 25 years ago. But not about me. This is about Blooming Blinds and the Stuart family. So how did this all start? Let's just start there. Like, blinds, boring, who cares? It's not hamburgers, you know what I mean? It's not beer. What makes this special? How did it start?
Yeah, and it's funny you say that because we often use the phrase that we are the redheaded stepchild of home services. Like, there are just so many more things that seem to draw the public's attention, and window coverings is just one of those necessary evils. It just kind of gets left to the end. My mom started this thing in the mid 90s. She's a serial entrepreneur. Both my parents are. I've never seen either of them have a 9-to-5. So we just are born with that heritage or pedigree. At the time, she was kind of in between businesses, having sold off one and hadn't started up anything else yet. She saw an ad in the back of the Seattle Post-Intelligencer for a blind cleaning machine. We're in Mount Vernon, Washington, small little bedroom community, 40,000 people. And as most entrepreneurs will, just thought, what, that's something new. Surely the world needs to have another blind company. And so she took off and she bought this blind cleaning machine and started advertising in the paper. This is, again, mid 90s. My brothers and I are in high school and started drawing in customers in the local market. What was interesting, though, is of all the people that responded to her ad, and again, this is like an ad in the newspaper. There's no internet. There's no website.
Right.
3/4 of the replies were for blind repair. There was a couple people who wanted their blinds cleaned, which is what she bought. But then she started to notice that the majority of the calls were for blind repair. Strings that were broken, pieces that were, like blinds that wouldn't tilt open and closed. You couldn't lift and lower them. These aren't parts that you can buy at Home Depot. They weren't then. They still aren't now. And like most entrepreneurs, she saw the opportunity, went through the grit of trying to figure out how to maximize or grab that opportunity as it was being brought to her, and slowly built a one-woman blind company over the next 7 years.
Amazing.
It would take a lot more than the time that we have, all the fun stories. But my favorite part is that she went to a manufacturer and said, "Hey, can you sell me some parts?" And the manufacturer said, "No, every time you fix a blind, that's one less I sell." Not a woman who likes to be told no. She waited till the factory closed. She went around the back of the building and she literally hopped in a dumpster and started pulling labels off boxes to figure out where this manufacturer was buying their parts. We
Oh my God.
still buy from some of those companies. We're,
Oh wow.
30 years later. Gets a divorce in late 2001, decides she wants out of this little bedroom community and has a girlfriend that's living in Dallas. So she just pulls her roots and moves to Dallas. And within a couple of years, my brothers and I all migrated down here, and we jumped in to Bloom and Blinds as a family. Started growing that, realized we had something unique, something special. Again, we were the only blind cleaning and repair company in all of Dallas Fort Worth, because it's not that repair aspect is uncommon. It's the industry primarily just sells and repairs or sells and installs products.
Right.
Franchised it in 2014. Sold off our corporate store or our family business to a franchise owner in 2018. And so we've spent the last 9 years really kind of understanding franchising and really understanding the responsibility and the pieces in place to become a good franchisor.
Yeah. So the thing that I don't want to let pass by is the fact that, your mom is just a lady just trying to figure out life, trying to put food on the table. She sees a thing and she makes a phone call, right? That's entrepreneurship. It's not anything, it's not anything more than that. People feel like,
Yeah.
oh, after you're born an entrepreneur, you gotta have. No, it's just about doing something. It's about making a phone call. It's about, taking action. That's entrepreneurship. And I just wanted to not let that pass because that's the holy grail of business right there is taking action.
Yeah.
I love that part.
I think you're spot on, Tom, because it's anytime you take on something new, even if it's in an industry you're familiar with, if it's a new role, a new job, or a new business, there's this level in which you're in that uncomfortable spot of not knowing what you're doing.
Right.
And it's okay to be scared. It's just not okay to stop you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's a lesson that can be learned whether you're in business or not. That's just a great lesson to learn, is never let it stop you.
Right. And my mantra is it's not difficult, it's just new. And
Right.
that's how you kind of nurture our new franchise owners as they buy a franchise, whether it's Blooming Blinds or something else. It's like, listen, you're going to be overwhelmed probably for the first 6 months, maybe longer. I know I was for the first year before I got comfortable in my first business, but it was just because I was learning all these new things. And if you make that exciting instead of like, oh, I'd rather just be working at the desk at the job that I've known for the past 10 years, then you could really do something grand, spectacular. So that's the opportunity I believe that Blooming Blinds gives is that it's not rocket science. It's not all these moving parts like a restaurant operation or something like that. It's not even a brick and mortar business, right? Is it home based? I mean, how does that work?
For the most part, most of our franchise owners start home based.
Mm-hmm.
And, by and large, this takes up about one bay of a garage.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you scale, as you get employees, or as the business gets bigger, you may want a small commercial space, maybe a commercial warehouse kind of environment. Before we developed the franchise, we were pushing a couple $1 million. So I know what it looks like to do over $1 million off of mom's kitchen counter.
Mm-hmm.
I know at that point and at those levels, it's more than just one bay in a garage. It's two bays in a garage and a dining room. We literally did Thanksgiving dinner where we took a tablecloth and we put it over a stack of boxes that were going to be installed like the next week, and that became like the buffet table because blinds were up in the living room in mom's house, and so it was, instead of moving them, like, let's just utilize them.
that's entrepreneurship. I mean, you just make it happen. And
Yeah.
you can't sit there and say, oh my God, I'm overwhelmed. What are we going to do with these boxes? We have to cancel Thanksgiving dinner. It's like,
Oh no. You pray for those problems. You pray for those challenges.
yeah.
And when they get there, you're excited about them instead of, some sort of, headache or hassle that you have to. Like, you worked really hard to get those boxes in the living room. You couldn't be more proud to put a tablecloth over the top of them.
Yeah, heck yeah. No, it's great. And that's a cool thing. So when you're thinking about, franchise owners, for you guys, who are you looking for? What are the characteristics of someone? Do they have to have, window treatment experience? So, and I'm being facetious, obviously, but I'm
Well, yeah, that's a common question, though. We get that asked a lot because I think a common impression is that you have to be super handy or you have to be from the industry to be able to figure this out. Um, and I think the part of that sentence that most people make the error is to figure this out on your own. And that's the difference in a franchise is you're not figuring it out on your own. You've got people or teams around you that have a high level of experience, not only themselves, but then also teaching others how to do it. We've got 3 franchise owners that had prior experience, but those are because those are 3 corporate employees that have went on to buy their own franchise. But those are the only 3 out of 85 owners that ever had window covering experience.
wow.
Well, just to answer your question, I don't need a carpenter. I don't need a mechanic. I don't need someone who's incredibly handy. At the same time, can't be allergic to power tools. We use cordless drills. That's about as complicated as it gets.
Mm-hmm.
For the most part, our owners, a lot of them will go into the living room and they'll be part of that sales team initially. And so having someone with a friendly personality, someone who loves to teach and share information. I don't need car salesmen. I need presenters. I need people who love sharing information because the general public doesn't know anything about window coverings.
Right.
And so being willing to take the time and the skill set to share that info is really important. I also need someone who wants a coach, someone who likes mentorship, because my family has almost 30 years of experience doing this. My brothers and I are still here every day. We're taking calls from owners. And it breaks my heart when I don't get to kind of infuse that information into their day-to-day operations. The whole concept behind a franchise is that you're not doing it alone. You've got somebody behind you that can help you get there faster. Yeah. And so we've identified that pride can get in the way a lot. And so we need someone who's willing to get past that because adults aren't programmed to ask for help. That's not society's way of doing things these days. But it's a huge missed resource that creates liability if you're not leaning into the support system. And that's true whether you buy a Baskin Robbins or a Bloomin' Blinds. Like that's a truth statement of franchising right there.
Yes, it's the basis of franchising. Like people don't get it. And so what I mean by that is a franchise is a business with training wheels. That's what I tell people. But it's not a kind of thing where they're saying, you need to do it this way and you do it that way. And, this is the time you do this and that's the time you do that. And then you got to do this. It's like, here's the guidebook. Here's the blueprint. If you want a really good foundation in your business, follow this blueprint. If you don't want to, don't know why you bought a franchise, but, that's what it is. And the great book that probably E-Myth by Michael Gerber, and that's really, he talks a lot about that, where people start a business from scratch and they know their business, but they don't know anything else about marketing and employee hiring and retention and now technology and what's going on with AI. And if you're just like a little shop owner, how are you going to figure out AI? And it could help you so much. I know you guys embrace a lot of that technology because you can. You have your brother that's running the IT side of the whole business, and so that's franchise. I'm sorry, I'm babbling because I get so excited about it, and it helped me go from working in the subway in New York to being a business owner and changing my family's trajectory forever. I mean,
yeah, I think sometimes franchising has some improvement in terms of that confusion between the systems and processes that are in place versus the personal freedoms that are still there. And I think sometimes individuals get caught up on the rules. And as a brand, I can tell you personally, Like there are a handful of things that are required, things that are brand centric, so that we kind of produce the same hamburger regardless of what McDonald's you go to, right? So the software or the branding or the vehicles or the uniforms, those need to be consistent. But then how you go about it day after day, that's where you get to personalize it. And that's where you really get to create it your own. And there's so much personal freedom inside franchising. And I don't know how to articulate that better to candidates, to those that are interested in franchising. But man, if they can hear me now, like there is tons of room for your personal business and your personal way of doing things inside that structure, as long as you are not so entrepreneurial that that structure drives you crazy.
All right. I think it's a lot like owning a condominium instead of a house in a way.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? It's like, so you're in the condo, you have to follow these rules, but the condominium association takes care of the roof, they take care of the landscaping, they take care of the pool or whatever it is. And you make the inside of that building, your condo, yours. It's your family pictures on the wall. It's your couch that you bought, the type of TV you wanted, and that's, I think, one way to explain it. You're paying for it, yes, but the thing, like when I sold a house that I had in an HOA, I got a lot more money because it was an HOA and it was beautiful as the day it was
Right.
built 30 years earlier. It was pristine because it has to be, it's the rules. So that's one way to look at it. I know sometimes HOA gets a bad rap, and so does franchising, because at one
Yeah.
point there was very unscrupulous people that were selling franchises. And so, that's why a company like Franchise embraces a company like Blooming Blinds, because it's a family business. Like you said, you and your brothers are there answering the phone day in and day out. And that's what makes the difference.
Yeah. It's, the family side of the business is a big part for us. I think it's there are certain individuals who want a big machine. They want that power. They want that national presence. And someday we'll grow to that place, but we're not there right now. And the downside is you kind of turn into more of a number the bigger the machine.
Right.
I think we're kind of at like a really sweet spot right now, because with 9 years in this and 85 owners, we're well beyond the baby stage. And
Right.
But yet we're still small enough that, like, I know your kids' names. And at the same time, because we do have 85 owners, like we have resources, we have the ability to bring in infrastructure or some really cool tech that if you're a mom and pop, you can't afford. I know, because I pay the bills.
Right.
So
Yes.
there's no way mom and pop can afford some of this stuff. And so we're at the moment, we find ourselves in this really great spot where we're not too big to be impersonable. We're not too small where we can't do some really cool stuff. We've got scalability there. Won't be here forever, but in the moment, it's really a lot of fun for us.
Well, I think that it's almost like if you bought into something like Blooming Blinds now with 85 owners, or when I bought my smoothie franchise back in 2000, I was the 25th owner. It's like buying a stock before it goes public,
Mm-hmm.
right? So you could get into like a Blooming Blinds now in late 2024, early 2025, and in 5 years from now, I sold my franchise in 5 years and was able to semi-retire at 41 years old, because I rode this wave. And as they went national, I was able to get a lot more money because it was worth a lot more. So
Yeah.
it's almost like, again, buying stock before it breaks. And that is another advantage. Plus what you said, if you talk to the former president of the smoothie franchise I owned, he'll tell you I called him every single day for the first few months of that franchise. And we joke about it now. I see him at franchise conferences every once in a while. And he taught me how to run a business. I had no idea. And I could, tell you all sorts of stories, but it's the power of a franchise and a young franchise. And yours is not young, because even before you started franchising, you had like what, 20 years, 25 years of experience running the blind industry. You're in that industry.
Yeah. Before we franchised, we had a multi-million-dollar family business.
Right.
We'd figured out how to do window coverings really well. Now, over these last 9 years, we've figured out how to do franchising really well, and now we get to pair them up together. But I think you bring up a good point. And, for the time that we have, like, I think it'd be awesome for anyone who's listening to this that might be exploring it. Like, maybe we can dig in instead of, Bloomin', like go to our website, call us. We'll have instead of spending all this time on Bloomin', I'd love to take time to kind of help people figure out what does it look like when you're seeing one of these non-machine. It's not a Dairy Queen. It's not a, Meineke. It's what are you looking at when you see an opportunity, but they're just not totally built out yet, or frankly, just the evaluation of any franchise system, regardless of what size.
That's cool, man. That's cool, Kelsey. Thank you for that. That's a great idea. So all right. So from your perspective, right? So you talk to a lot of people every year that are kicking tires, looking at like, I don't know, and you guys don't have a brand, and when I Google you, you don't come up. It's like that's because we're not in your neighborhood. That's why. But anyway,
That's true. Say that. Yep.
So what's your advice, right? I'm out there. I don't know what the heck is what the heck, and what do I do?
Well, I think a lot of franchising is, or as you're evaluating a franchise, I think it's a really good idea to talk to existing owners, assuming that there are some. But at the same time, like, you got to take everything with a grain of salt. Some people are natural promoters. They're champions for the brand, and they're going to paint a rosier picture just because they have an opportunity to tell a story, and they're positive storytellers. You also have other people who may be doing really well financially, but they also might be like, bit of an Eeyore. They just always have a rain cloud. So you, like anything, references, you got to take them all with a grain of salt. I think you really need to lean into a franchise and figure out and learn as much as possible on who am I going to work with after this discovery process. Once I'm in business, who am I going to be working out? Who am I working with? What is their context? What is their experience? Did you just hire them from another company 6 months ago? That's not nearly as valuable as someone who's been in the industry or been in that business before.
Wow.
And then the third piece is, like, why does the world need another one? I think that's one of the faster ways for a candidate to see if a brand really understands their value proposition and if they have a defendable position in a marketplace, is if a brand can answer, why does the world need another one? Then you have yourself a real opportunity to jump into a new market.
Huh. That's a cool way to look at it. I like it. And I like, to expand on what you said, calling franchise owners. I mean, that's a really cool thing. You will be able, like, if you were investigating blooming blinds, they would encourage you to call as many franchise owners as you can. And you'll get all different stories. There's no question about it. It's like a bell curve, any bell curve. People are doing great. People are not doing well, but the majority are doing just fine in the middle. I don't know of any other opportunity in the world where you could talk to the end user and say, how's it going? Like,
yeah, Google reviews is as close as you get.
Yeah, and that's not even, you don't know who it is.
Yeah, even then, businesses can gatekeep which reviews go up and down.
Right. There's no question. Yeah. So that's important. What do you say to somebody when they say, like, a service business? You got to have a store in order to make it.
I would argue that today's society, certainly in the last couple of years, has pivoted to a bring it to me society. I mean, think about Amazon, right? Like, it takes 2 days if you're close to a warehouse. And I think most people understand that Amazon's not always the cheapest place to get it, but people are willing to pay that dollar amount because it's brought to them. I don't have to go to the store. I can continue on with my life while it's in transit. It comes to me. Sometimes it comes in a couple hours. Uber Eats, just Uber in particular, like, there's just a whole migration to this whole world that says, bring it to me. And a brick and mortar doesn't do that. Brick and mortar makes customers come to you, and it adds to the overhead. It's staffing. It's a lot of, the only positivity to a brick and mortar is foot traffic. But if you're going to get a lot of foot traffic, whoever owns that building knows it, and they're going to be charging you for it.
Oh yeah, that's right. The best spots are astronomically high.
Totally.
If you want to be next to a Starbucks and a Whole Foods forget about it. It's so
Yeah.
expensive.
If you're in a service business, my reply is if you needed a plumber right now, all of a sudden there's water coming out of your ceiling. How are you going to find a plumber right now?
Mhm.
And everyone responds, I get on my phone or I get on my computer. Exactly. Like I don't need a brick and mortar. I need to be really good at digital marketing and I need to have efficiencies and I need to manage, I need some expertise in that. But that's the majority of where your customers are going to come from, especially until you build up your referral network, until you have those repeat customers.
So when you're investigating a franchise, then, so I get a franchise owner on the phone and like, oh yeah, I've been with Blooming for 18 months. Okay, great. How's their digital marketing?
Mm.
Are customers, responding? And like, and that's how you can validate the franchise. We actually call it validation calls. On my website, I have 39 questions to ask franchise owners when investigating a company.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and I break it down by department, like marketing and HR and all that stuff. Um, but it's fascinating, and I'm so happy that you're willing to talk about the fact that people out there just don't know what they don't know, and they need to sort of just have an open mind. Some of the best things out there is our service businesses, and you just don't know it because to your point, there's no store that you kind of happened upon on the way to CVS or Walgreens. Um,
Yeah,
but
it's not out in front of you all the time.
right, right. But then when you go in and do the investigation, a lot of times like your socks are blown off when you start looking at the numbers and repeat customers and like net promoter scores and like all of that stuff. You're like, oh my goodness.
Well,
So
the nice thing about a home service is that we get to spend our money and our marketing efforts on being there when you come looking. We generally don't spend much effort or money on trying to convince you that you need us.
right,
There's a lot of money spent on trying to convince the public that they need XYZ.
yeah.
And we get to focus on the simple competition of being here when you come looking. And that's a much more effective, much more affordable approach to marketing. And it takes far fewer dollars to get what you need out of it.
So well said. Um, you can't convince me to buy blinds or curtains or whatever if I don't need it. I don't
Right.
need it. I don't need it.
It's wasted
So,
money.
boy, that's brilliant. I love it. So cool. If you can answer this one question for me, what's one myth that you can break right now about franchising or about the window covering industry?
Um, well, okay, so I suppose I'll kind of reframe this into another question that a candidate could ask, kind of trying to pitch it as a myth, though. Everything's going to go in cycles, right? There's going to be ups and there's going to be downs. And hopefully, if you're looking at starting a business, you're doing this for the long run. You're in for the marathon. You're in for decades. And provided that this goes the way you want, or you want to have it for a while. And I guess to weave in the question would be like, what's a franchisor's plan? What's a brand's plan on how to navigate the economic cycles? When the money goes up and the money goes down, and it always does, right? Traditionally, it's a 7 to 10 year cycle. We've been on a really long, good run. But when that next 2 or 3 years of tightening shows up, like what's the brand's plan to pivot around that? How are we going to get through this? And what's your experience? What's your level of confidence? How are you going to pivot us? How are you going to keep us in an advantageous scenario? You can't protect everybody, but you can put people in good positions. So the idea that everything's going to be sunny all the time or everything's going to be terrible all the time, depending on when you launch your business, that's the myth. Is you have to be willing to ride the roller coaster because it's going to go up and it's going to go down. But you need a partner who knows how to get through it really well.
Mm-hmm. Love it. That's so great. I got to say, I mean, we could talk about this for another few hours,
Yeah.
but your time is tight. I appreciate you giving us all these nuggets here. So this is fantastic. I appreciate it. If you want more information about Blooming Blinds, check out the website, bloomingblinds.com, or you could go to thefranchiseacademy.com and all the information will be there as well. So, Kelsey, again, thank you so much. Say hello to your brothers.
I
And
will.
And we'll see you at the next franchise conference.